Hi, this is Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. Today we're going to look at a really beautiful pen, and a special pen. This is the 1992 Pelikan Demonstrator pen. It's significant for people who collect Pelikan pens because really it's the first pen that Pelikan introduces with the intention of really becoming a collectible, and then it sets off a whole series of, I guess now hundreds of pens that Pelikan issues over the years that are really created with the idea both of making a beautiful pen, but also the idea that there are people crazy like me who love pens and love the idea of collecting multiple pens that have unusual characteristics. Supposedly, this demonstrator version of the M800 was created because users wanted a pen that was a demonstrator. Of course, the wonderful thing about demonstrator pens is the way in which the ink sloshes around inside. The special feature of this pen is that it has an oblique nib, and it really writes beautifully. Unfortunately, Pelikan doesn't have a standard oblique nib anymore for the M800, so that's a nice feature of the pen. I got it on, obviously used, and from a very good dealer at a great price, possibly because it didn't come with a box and it didn't come with a certificate. So as part of the process of making this a collectible, when you bought it, you got a special certificate from Pelikan, but then they started making more of them, or at least selling many of them without the certificate. And this is one of the criticisms that Pelikan has gotten, I think both at the time and for some of the other pens they've made as special editions, which is that there's this assumption that there are only going to be so many of them when you are first buy them, and then when they sell so well, the Pelikan makes more of them. In this particular case, too, a few years ago, Pelikan came out with a new version of this pen that looks very similar to it. It has some different detailing, particularly, like, for example, on the cap. It's 30 years later. For somebody who is a collector like me, there's a big is a difference between the 1992 version and the 2023 version. But to people who are not so obsessed, who cares, right? For me, though, what is very important is that the nib is different, and the oblique nib, I think, both writes beautifully, but is a great nib for drawing. You see that the cap top has two little chicks, and also pens from the early 90s in the M800 line have this sort of engraved top. Later versions of the pen, for example now, the way in which they're putting the Pelikan on the top is, I guess, done with laser cut. I don't know quite how it's done, but it's not as nice as the way they used to do it. It has, of course, the signature Pelikan beak clip, which is so nice. And I should, of course, say that the nib is, in this case, an 18 karat nib, which is just very beautiful. And like all the M800s, just writes so smoothly. So here's the pen, the demonstrator version, and I'm showing it here with a contemporary Souverain. This is also from the 90s. It has the celluloid, semi sort of transparent barrel, which is in the earlier 90s and probably into the 2000s version of the pen. The pens that they're making now, this is a blue version, it has a different material here, which is not as nice. This early version also has on the bottom this beautiful bit of golden or brass metal here. You can see that also in this version. This is the 1992 Demonstrator version of the top cap. This would be a more recent version of the top, and I think it's better on the earlier version. But these are, I suppose, relatively minor differences. Now, another thing which is nice to see is here you see the M800 Demonstrator. Since they came out with this pen, Pelikan has introduced a whole series of Demonstrator pens in all of their different lines, but they're very popular in the M200 and 205. This is the Duo, which is kind of in a neo yellow. Has all three of these pens, of course, are piston fillers. How does the pen write? So this is a Pelikan M800 Demonstrator, and it is an OB nib, and this is Waterman Harmonious Green, and this is Rhodia paper. So if I go down like this, it goes like that, and I go like that. So sometimes people call this a kind of architect nib, and you can get a lot of variation. It is very smooth, particularly for a nib that is an OB nib or oblique nib. I don't have great handwriting, but I like it, makes my handwriting look nice. Here is the Pelikan M800, and this is a medium nib, and this is, I believe, diamond ochre, and as we know, it's it's Rhodia paper, and this has a little bit of line variation. It's very, very smooth. This is the pen that got me to fall in love with Pelikan pens. So this writes very nicely. So you see, it gives it just a bit of a flair to my handwriting. So I really like this too. And I like the way both pens look.